Lunacid is an early access first-person dungeon crawler inspired by FromSoft's older titles like Kingsfield and Shadow Tower. While promising, I feel it came out too early for its own good, feeling more like a sandbox of half-baked mechanics. Before I begin discussing anything further, it's worth mentioning that a major aspect of this game is exploration and discovery of areas. As such, I will try and keep specific names and details out of this review for the sake of spoilers, but footage of various areas is shown throughout. If you want to go in as blind as possible, skip to this point in the video. Secondly, rather than stating this every single time I criticize something, I am fully conscious of this game being unfinished. The latest content update was the January 14th Boiling Grotto update, so any future watchers should probably check the patch notes to see what content has been added since. The first thing I want to talk about are the areas, as they're the most major aspect of the game. There are currently 7 unique areas, one of them being a Firelink Shrine equivalent, and at least one more planned for the future. While they are all very distinct from each other aesthetically, the earlier areas have a lot less polish compared to the late game areas, especially regarding signposting. There are frequent times where an area will have identical rooms and/or a lack of landmarks. For instance, the sewer area has 2 rooms that are just lakes with ground around the edges. If there's just one, it would make for a great way to orientate the player on where exactly they are. The sewers also feature an area that's lacking good signposting in a highly detrimental way. This is the first room you'll see once you get there. There's nothing really distinct between the pathways, leaving us with 3 possibilities: forward, left, or right. Forward is blocked, meaning the next choice is essentially a coin flip. There might be a bit more math to that, but I'm not sure. If you do know, please comment. One of these pathways is the way to progress, and the other is the only save point you'll see for the next 2 areas. This is also problematic as the prior area did not have a save point at all, meaning the last time they were at a save point was at the start at the beginning area of the game. At that point, it would be a reasonable assumption for a player to think that's the only area of the save point. There are 2 ways to fix this. The first one is to move a save point to the middle of that first room, making it impossible to miss. The other option utilizes signposting to lead the player to it. Add some small pink crystals to the right path that will naturally draw the player's attention to that area and take them to the save point. There's also the bonus third option of making the side right here a different color that actually stands out from the rest of the room. It doesn't require you to physically touch to read it. That would also help. The next area for save point also has this issue, with one way having a save point and the other having very strong enemies and nothing else. Unless the player did some major backtracking at any point, they might have all just had their save deleted. There's also a different area you can get to at this point that has a save point, but this leads to the next issue: poor non-linear design. Lunacid aims to have non-linear progression featuring alternate paths to the same area, but has a major flaw of disadvantaging the player if they chose the wrong one. Their first fork in a road to take you to the aforementioned sewers, or the forest. No, not that one. The forest has 2 main issues. One is that you miss some important items, and the other is that it can soft lock you. Lunacid is pretty lax on required stats, but Dex, which increases your jump height, has to be around 30 for some jumps. If you go into the next area without that, or the item that teleports you to a Firelink Shrine equivalent, you're stuck there. So, once again, unless you backtracked all the way back to the start, you've lost a large amount of progress by going that way. Not quite a save point, but still a disheartening amount of progress lost. Then there's the rest of the map. Once you pass the sewers, the next fork actually lets you go to the current endgame areas if you want. You simply have to deal with the invincible enemies that are only susceptible to fire, a damage type only present on your torch at that point of the game. You know, if you want to. Or you can go the other way and get weapons that not only deal damage to the enemies there, but deal at least quadruple damage to any enemy sporting that immunity. You know, the choice is really up to you. The graveyard is probably my least favorite area overall. It has bizarre design, weird progression if you don't have dex leveled, and a very heavy reliance on using a torch until you find that fancy sword I was talking about earlier. It's one of a few items that isn't a secret in this area, as the graveyard has most of the treasures hidden in secrets, with one in particular that I feel is critical to both progression and enjoyment of the game in general. I will be showing it now, including how to get it. Once you reach this room, go to the right and open the secret wall. In this chest is the Twisted Staff, or as it could be better described,
the Torch Gun.
You'll be using that for the current rest of the game just for the lack of weapons that also function as a torch. I really don't have much to say about the rest of the area because it would just be needless spoilers, so we're just going to move on. After this, we get to areas added post-release, and I'm pleased to say that these areas address a lot of the issues that the prior ones had. The level design becomes a lot more coherent, and with more distinct rooms and actual honest-to-God signposting. It is such an improvement, and I hope that the prior areas get a redo with this level of quality. This concludes my criticisms about the level design, and the next topic is about the many mechanics of the game that all feel underbaked. The most immediate and obvious is is the dismemberment mechanic. Whenever you hit an enemy, a hit indicator shows up on a location where the hit was delivered. Hit an area enough and it gets cut off, which you would think provides some form of detriment to the enemy in question. It doesn't. It's just cosmetic. You'd think taking an enemy's head off would make it struggle to find you, or taking arms off would make it deal less damage, but no, we're able to fight just the same. Even worse, removing a limb also removes the status effects an enemy has as well, most noticeable with fire. I'm hoping this changes in the future because it feels awfully deceptive as of right now. Right-clicking while holding a weapon will allow you to block, and a lot of weapons are balanced around the lack of it in exchange for more damage. Only problem is that it isn't worth using at all. See, the whole concept works on paper, but in reality you can just press S. Speed is a stat you can upgrade as well, so it only gets better with time. I've mentioned stats a little bit already, and a couple of them will stick out. You have your basics, vigor, int, dex, strength, advanced speed, and resistance. Int only boosts spells, not magic weapons, which is odd. Dex boosts jump height and range weapons, and resistance reduces status effect duration. The existence of resistance is actually a blight because it means status effects take forever to go away, sometimes taking minutes. This isn't the worst for poison, you have an item that can cure it. But cursed means you can't attack and just get to stand there and watch. Then there's blind, which turns your monitor off. Some could even apply both, and let me tell you, it's really fun to experience that for like 3 minutes. Aside from a required amount of dex to progress, most of it is really up to you, and that means it's time for a classic Vigor lets you not care too much about taking hits, while Int lets you go crazy with magic. You still get some extra HP every time you level, but not enough to satisfy me. Magic is also meant to be the harder of the two, since every time you cast a spell, your lunacy increases, which increases damage taken, I think? Really hard to tell, and is again an unfinished system. That concludes my criticisms overall, but I want to discuss their implications. Discussing with others, I find that people take two stances on how the game currently is. One side is that the rough edges are a product of the game being in early access, it will be gone in full release. The other is that these edges are intentional as a homage to their inspirations and their archaic design, to put it simply. Both of these could be true, but I worry that it's going to land somewhere in the middle. I've been told a lot of specific edges are near one-to-one references in some cases, which is, well, neat, but irrelevant to most people born after 2000, I feel. Like, Shadow Tower isn't exactly a household name or anything like that. An additional worry I have is that the majority of the game mechanics that feel half-done are poorly already finished. Which, also concerns me, to say the least. If that's the case, like, I guess I could see why they expect to have a game done in 1 year's time from now. That doesn't bode well in the slightest in my mind. As such, it makes my final thoughts difficult because it's hard to tell what is and isn't finished. I initially felt that the majority of the mechanics weren't finished enough to the point where I thought it was too early for early access, but if we're actually finished already, then we're just bad, I guess, which hurts to say a little bit because of how much I like everything else about this game. I think it looks great visually, and I think the sound design is also great. Both of those are very strong aspects of the game. It's just that the rest of it is bogged down by it just feeling not done to an extent that it should be released to the public. The game isn't pricey and won't be after a full release either. For most of you, this is not a game I can recommend, but to both of you who saw my critiques as a good thing, have fun with it. As always, Steam page is in the description, and before you go, I have a single spoiler to discuss. Consider this the end of a video and flee before the darkness consumes and shows you unwanted visions of awards yet to be briefed. You have a reference to the Moonlight Greatsword, and it's not called the Moonblight Greatsword in the game where the moon cracked open and it leaked its juice everywhere or whatever. You just called your moon-themed games moon-themed sword Moonlight? That's it?